Let's talk. We're gonna close out the show with Gene in Texas. Wants to talk about being raised in a strict church but not getting indoctrinated. Gene, how can we help?
Yes, I just like to relate the experience that it's my guess that it was a luck of the draw thing that I never got indoctrinated. My entire family, oh my gosh, they're always on me. I lived at church. I've never heard of anybody like even Matt, for instance, from Atheist Experience. Speaking of the RAs, which was a sort of a child group that stood for Royal Ambassador. And we were supposed to, witness to everybody. This is Southern Baptist, so I figured he would know about that. And I'm surprised I've never heard of it. It's kind of like the Boy Scouts, really. But anyway, Vacation Bible School, it was in church 3 days a week, sang in the choir, the whole smash, gave my life to Jesus at age 12, when I really didn't. I was faking it. But just so I thought, I bet we get along easier if I just fake this. And it actually didn't work, unfortunately. But what happened was when I was 5 years old, I was, on occasion, my mother would be away at work, and I had a babysitter who would pull out a big, beautiful, colorful fairy tale book, which had really nice stories in it, and she would read them to me. And, of course, they pretty much always end with, and they lived happily ever after. Well, one day, not too long after the last time this had occurred, about 3 or 4 times, my mom pulled out I thought was the same book, this big, colorful children's book, obviously. And she starts reading to me the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, okay? Garden of Eden and all that. And I think thinking she's reading me a fairy tale, because it certainly sounds like one. And at the end, she asked me, well, Gene, what did you think of that story? And I said, well, that was a really weird fairy tale. It was actually a pretty gross fairy tale. Not a good ending. What's this original sin crap and the serpent that talks? This is getting kind of gross. This is not happily ever after. And so I said something along those lines. She said, no, Gene, see, I said, well, that's just a really weird fairy tale. And she said, well, Gene, this isn't a fairy tale. This is a true story. I'm thinking, Mommy's broken. Mommy, why would Mommy lie to me like that?
This is interesting. This reminded me of something that happened in my life where I loved reading and studying my Bible, even when I was a little kid. I really, really enjoyed it. Wow. And there was a time, but I was sort of a voracious reader generally. And my parents got me a Aesop's Fables book. And I remember
I love that book, by the way.
Yeah, and it's great when you're a little kid, you're reading this stuff. And so I'd read I'd read my fables, and my dad, I don't remember what it was that we were talking about, but he said, well, the Bible says God helps those who help themselves. And I had just read that shit in Aesop's Fables. And I was like, Dad, I don't think the Bible says that. And he's like, no, that's where that comes from. That definitely comes from the Bible. And my poor dad had to deal with me being a little smart ass kid, but I was like, no, I showed him. I was like, if you can find that in the Bible, I'm wrong, but it's here in the Fable book, and anyway, that reminded me of that, but please keep going.
Absolutely. I would like to relate one story that happened, say, about 4 Christmases ago. This is how bad it is in my family. Okay. The worst one in the group is my youngest brother, who's 6 years younger than I am. Now, mind you, I'm 65, but he's got it really bad. He came over one night for Christmas, and I'm like, I'm done. As far as I'm concerned, this is some sort of pagan ritual. That'll work for me. I can deal with that. Just please don't do a bunch of praying, Well, somehow he just starts spouting off a bunch of Christian crap. And I said, Ty, you do realize that if you had been born in a Middle Eastern country, more than likely right now you'd be Muslim, right? And he said, yeah, probably. So he agreed with me. And I said, well, by that particular token, you would be going to hell due to your thinking. He says, yep, that's what would be happening. I said, let me get this straight. By luck of the draw, you're born in the wrong country, and you're doomed to die, forever. And he said, yep, that's just how it is. I'm thinking, The man's insane.
It's an interesting thing. Because I mean it's the greatest predictor of what someone's religious belief is going to be. Boils down to geography and lineage. What do your parents believe? Where do you grow up? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's an interesting response from a believer to be like, well, fuck all those other people. So they were born in the wrong place. I guess sucks to be them. But yeah, Richard, what are your thoughts?
Again, I grew up non-religious. I've never really been religious. It's very interesting. So I love hearing these kind of stories, especially we've had two of them tonight, and it's not something I get very often from the US. It's and the most common story I get is the kind of your story, Kenneth, that you grew up religious and then you found your way out of it for whatever reason that was. It's very interesting to me to hear these people who were brought up in a religious environment but didn't adhere to it, and I find that fascinating. That I could listen to these stories all day because it brings a completely new dynamic to kind of, as an outsider, what I'm presented with as kind of the standard American model, if you like, that I'm used to.
It's so
I
common.
have one last thing to add.
Do it. No, add the thing, and then we're gonna wrap.
To add. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I was very lucky that particular coincidence happened at that young age, because if it hadn't happened, I probably would be just as every bit indoctrinated as the rest of my family. So I consider myself very lucky that happened at that time.
That's an interesting thing too to think about.
Reading of the fairy tale. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like because I think about this a lot too. Of going, why? How did I find my way out? Because plenty of people who I know who are perfectly intelligent people, people who are educated, people who who I've looked up to my whole life, and can continue to look at them and see those are perfectly good people, are still completely wrapped up in like the church that I grew up in, right? So looking at it, going,
thinking about it.
It gets weird, and I really hate when people in the atheist community will just write off believers as dumb, because that's just not the case. I mean, it's just a shitty thing to do.
Yeah, my wife's a believer, and she's got a master's degree in educational psychology. I don't think believers are dumb whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, the questions of
and my mom, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Please. No, you go ahead.
My wife, actually, I've been married for 43 years, and it's only been in the past 20 or so that my wife has become a Christian. And I don't even know how that happened, because she knows how against it I am. And I have to listen to her about every other day or so, start spouting off some Christian nonsense. Gays are going to hell and stuff like that. I'm like, oh no, don't say stuff like that. Some of my best friends are gay.
See, and this is interesting stuff.
I just kind of get.
That gets fascinating.
Yeah,
it's interesting that she's gone from kind of not Christian to kind of a particularly kind of right-wing form of Christianity as well. Because there were plenty of liberal kinds of Christian groups she could have joined that think being gay is perfectly normal, which it is, of course.
Well, what's been fascinating to watch here in the U.S. over the last few years, and I don't know what the experience has been in the U.K., but with seeing how susceptible people are to misinformation, seeing how something like the Dunning-Kruger effect plays out in real time, while as people form extremely confident beliefs in things they know very little about. Just seeing sort of the mass psychology of our culture here, and seeing just how vulnerable people are to believing things for bad reasons. What should happen, in my opinion, is that all of us who value skepticism, who value critical thinking, should look at that and go, wow, I too am a human being. I probably have a bunch of blind spots. I probably need to be really tuned in to my own vulnerability to this, and making sure that I'm not stepping in believing things for bad reasons too. So
that's a good point. Yes.
rather than responding and being like, well, I am obviously above believing dumb shit. No, you're not. No, you're not. None of us are. So, this is what a great place to stop the show, to be like, all of us are vulnerable to believing dumb shit, and we should be mindful of it. And, be mindful of that when we're talking to people who might believe dumb shit, and have some empathy, maybe just a little bit. We can attack the dumb shit ideas.
It's such a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can attack the dumb shit ideas.
It's a good thing to hear you say that. Yeah. I like the fact that you realize that, as I do about myself, I wonder how much more other dumb bullshit I currently believe.
I like, well, and that's the thing. The number one rule. So for those who don't know, I'm sure that our mods are going to do a better job, like explaining, Dunning-Kruger and posting links and stuff in the chat. But the general idea is that there's a curve to the degree to which someone's confidence in their knowledge correlates to their actual expertise, right? So when you know nothing, you think I know nothing, and then when you know a little bit, you think I know fucking everything, and then it drops off. So as people gain expertise, their confidence sort of goes down and then curves back up again as they become really experts in something. But people who know very little about stuff tend to think they know more than experts in those fields. And the first rule of Dunning-Kruger Club is that you don't know you're in Dunning-Kruger Club. That is the whole thing of what's so insidious about it, is that odds are, if you feel super, super confident about something, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
And I'm going to tease you a little bit as well, because I can't actually remember the details. So this is why it's a tease, because you're going to have to go and look it up yourself. But the original study, which kind of started all the Dunning-Kruger thing, is absolutely hilarious. It involves a thief.
Okay, so I don't know about this.
That's all I can remember about it, but I can remember laughing so hard when I heard the story. And that was kind of the original study. It was a real life guy. It was a real life case study that started the whole Dunning-Kruger thing off. Hilarious. Go and look it up.
Interesting. Well, hey, Gene, it's been fun. Thank you very much for calling in. I'm glad you weren't indoctrinated. I'm glad you read the fables.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a pleasure, and I'll speak to you maybe sometime down the road.
Hope so. All right. Take care.